everyone, and welcome again to Jason's in the House. I'm your host, Jason Parisella, realtor with Keller Williams Realty here in Beverly. And our guest today is Jerry Parisella. Jerry is an attorney with Tinty, Grover, and Fry in Salem. And he's also Beverly State Representative. Welcome, Jerry. It's a pleasure to have you on the show again.
Great, thanks. Good to be here.
So why don't we start by you telling us a little bit about yourself, your job at the State House, and what you're up to.
Yeah. Well, thanks. It's good to be here again. I've served 3 terms as Beverly State Rep. Each term is 2 years. Fortunately, just got reelected, so I'll be going back for a 4th term. Thank you. And I serve as chairman of the Veterans Committee at the State House. As you know, I'm a veteran, so the Speaker selected me to be chairman of the Veterans Committee. So one of the focuses that our committee has is all kinds of federal and veterans legislation that would be pertinent to the state. So we've been working on veterans bills and things like that, and also just representing Beverly at the State House. That's Excellent. My district is all of Beverly.
And you're also an attorney, right?
Yes, yeah. Yep. I work at a firm in Salem doing a lot of real estate work, civil matters like wills and trusts and things like that.
Okay, excellent. All right, so as you mentioned, like I said, congratulations on being reelected. We just had an election. Donald Trump is president-elect. Well, locally, we have some questions that we had to answer as a public, and charter school is one of the ones I want to talk with you about, and also the marijuana bill. So why don't we talk first about the charter schools? Give us some information about it. Help us understand it, how it affects Beverly, us here locally, and we can talk about that a little bit further.
Yeah. So the question would have allowed 12 more charter schools per year, each year. It got defeated.
What's the difference between a charter school and a public school?
Basically, a charter school has its own board. They're sort of their own little independent school, but they do get local and state money.
So it's a private school.
Sort of a private school that gets state money, and that was sort of the contention and the issue. I think with the ballot question was a lot of people were saying, well, why should this sort of private school, although the proponents will say that it's a public school, but not everyone can get in there. There's a lottery and things like that, and there's limitations on who can get into the school and things like that. So about $450 million goes to charter schools in Massachusetts.
So that's right now, because charter school, that question got voted down.
It got voted down, but there still are charter schools, and there still will be charter schools. This question would have just allowed more expansion, at a quicker pace. There still is room for more charter schools in Massachusetts. Each city and town can have a charter school if their school committee votes for it, but there's also a limitation on how much money will go to the charter schools, because they didn't want to have, let's say, for example, if Boston had just a whole bunch of charter schools, all this money would be poured into the charter schools and would be taken away from their local schools. So there's a limitation, basically 9 to 18% of your school budget can go to a charter school. So Beverly doesn't have any charter schools now.
I was just going to ask you if Beverly had any.
We don't. Salem has a charter school. There's other communities around the North Shore that have charter schools, but Beverly doesn't. But the school committee voted to oppose the question because they were worried about the effect that it could have. But there are some Beverly kids that do go to charter schools. So Beverly is paying for those kids to go to these charter schools. So even though we don't have a charter school, they're still paying. And the state is supposed to reimburse the cities and towns some money, but everyone says it's not the full amount. So that was the concern, that it would just be taking away money from the public schools and going to these charter schools. And Beverly has a really good school system, and I think in Massachusetts we have excellent schools overall, but there are some communities that aren't doing as well as others, whether it might be in Lawrence or Holyoke or some of these communities. So, the supporters wanted to increase the availability of charter schools, but the question lost pretty overwhelmingly. It was 62% to 38% or something like that.
Yeah.
I think because of the concern that it would be taking away money from our public schools.
So what determines whether the city, specifically Beverly, would pay for a child to go to a charter school based upon the child's need? The public school couldn't fulfill?
It's more like the parents make that decision to send their kid to a charter school, and if the kid gets in,
really,
then that student is it's almost like a school choice thing, and then the school district pays for that kid. So there are some Beverly kids going to the Salem Charter School or there could be other charter schools that they're going to. So then the city of Beverly is paying for those
Whatever
kids.
that tuition is, or up to
Essentially
what
what that tuition is, yeah, the state has like oversight over the charter schools. You have to, like if you wanted to open up the Jason Parisella Charter School, you'd apply to the state, show them your plan, and if they approve it, then you'd have a charter school. And then when you start getting these kids in, you're getting that tuition money from whatever communities the kids come from.
I can see how that could be a concern with the public schools, and like you said, where the funding is going, and there already are charter schools now. So.
Right. There are charter schools.
So what was the whole idea to increase the amount of charter schools? To just give children more choice?
Yeah, the proponents said, hey, there's our schools, our parents want more choice. They want to be able to send their kids to a school of their choice, especially in, like I said, some of these districts where
I see where
the communities, it's a little bit tougher, like in Lawrence and Holyoke and maybe Springfield.
So the public school rating is down, and they don't want to send them to the public school.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to note is that it's like there was a lot of debate about, geez, do we have good schools in Massachusetts or not? Overall, we've got excellent schools in Massachusetts. Among all the states, we rank #1 in test scores.
Wow.
And actually, in just today, the state received an assessment. Massachusetts is one of 2 states where they do this international test where they pick out kids from a bunch of different schools. I think it's 49 different school districts, and they take this international test. It's called the PISA. And if Massachusetts were its own country, we'd be ranked in the top 10 in like reading, math, and science. So our students do really well overall. Like I said, there are some pockets where some kids aren't doing as well, and we want to definitely try to help out those communities. But I think the argument that we're not doing a good job in Massachusetts isn't true. Like I said, we'd be ranked right on the top as an own country.
Yeah.
If as far as like this PISA test is concerned.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So like you said, people didn't see the need as much for charter schools in this area. So who spearheaded that bill?
There were a number of like private entities, that
had
probably
to do with
wanted
charter
to
schools,
wanted to open up more charter schools, and then like the teachers union and others were spent a lot of money against it, worried about that it would drain money from the public schools. So a lot of money was spent on the ballot question.
Yeah. So to summarize, it sounds like in Beverly specifically, it's not. We've got a really good school system already, and the need for charter schools may not be as great. Or that maybe it'd be greater need for it in some of these other
Yeah,
communities.
exactly. I mean, I think Beverly doesn't have a charter school, but there was concern that if you have that expansion, there was no cap. It was like 12 a year. It just kept going and going and going. So eventually they were worried that maybe, there'd be a charter school in Beverly and taking away resources from the public schools.
There still could be a charter school in Beverly.
Possibly could be, yeah.
I mean, I noticed there are a lot of schools in general that seem to be. I mean, actually, at the Memorial Building, wasn't there a school? Actually, McEwen School. They used to have. There's a few around.
Yeah, I mean that. Well, there's a couple schools there. They've moved. They're still in Beverly, but like this Kevin O'Grady School. But that's like for like special needs.
Yeah.
Like I've been to that school, and they do some amazing work. You've got some kids who are like wheelchair bound or severe learning disabilities. So the way that works is each city and town in our area contributes to that school to help pay for that. So those are the kids with the most serious issues. They have like one-on-one care, the occupational therapist. There's also the Recovery High School, which is in Beverly, for kids who are dealing with addiction issues. And so that's in Beverly as well.
Where is that?
That's on Sawyer Road now. That used to be at the school that you were talking about, the McEwen School. But
so now they moved to, I think it was the Kaiser Building.
Yeah, up on Sawyer Road. Yeah. So they do a great job.
New England Academy just moved up to Cherry Hill, I believe. They were at the Cummings Center. I noticed that because we work over there.
Yeah. So there are, like you said, there's a number.
But those
of
those are private schools.
They're essentially private schools. They do get public money, but that's really more for like a specialized student population as opposed to a charter school, which is more generalized.
Does that could that question come up? How does that work? Could it come up on the next ballot? Or
I think it's possible, but I mean, it was a pretty resounding defeat, so I just don't think it. A lot of I think like $35 million or something like that was spent on advertising and things like that. So, I highly doubt they're going to spend that kind of money again.
Yeah,
especially with the margin of defeat.
Right.
Okay.
Good. So the next one, hot topic, is the marijuana. And is that what it is, the marijuana bill?
Yeah, so that was another
the
ballot
technical
question.
name? Is that?
Yeah. Question 4, and that passed. That was closer. That was like 54% passed.
Now, is that, I can't remember, is that the first time it was on the ballot? Or was it on before?
I don't know if you
Do
remember,
know?
there was like the medical marijuana
Oh,
a few years ago. So that's legal. Now, medical
so that
marijuana
passed.
is legal in Massachusetts. There are some medical marijuana clinics, like Salem has one.
Yeah.
Beverly doesn't. But
So that's been on for how long?
that's been on for a couple of years.
That's been legal. Medical marijuana, you get a prescription. That's been legal.
Right, right.
So there's a place in Salem you can get that.
Right. There's a place in Salem where you can go if you get a prescription from your doctor.
So now what's the...
So this one would essentially be allowing recreational use, so you don't need that prescription. So what's going to happen is, effective December 15th, people will be able to grow their own marijuana plants in their house for their own use. Still not supposed to be able to sell it, not supposed to be for commercial use, but just growing it yourself for your own use, up to 6 plants. And then what's going to happen is next year, in 2017, a Cannabis Control Commission is going to be appointed, 3 members, and they're supposed to come up with all the rules and regulations for recreational use of marijuana. And then eventually that'll lead to stores selling it.
So that's probably, so at least a year away until we see...
It's probably a year
the stores.
away, and there is discussion at the State House about maybe delaying it a bit, just because, like, the state treasurer who's in charge of this saying she needs more time to look into this and to make sure it's done right.
Right.
So whether or not that'll happen, I don't know. Another part of it is there's an excise tax of 3.75% that's added on to the sale of marijuana, and that's supposed to pay for all the regulations and the police and the enforcement and all that. That's very low compared to other states. Like, some states have 20, 25% tax, so that may go up.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it seems
You
low
know?
compared to the other places.
It's much lower, and they're saying that that's just not going to bring enough money to oversee the entire...
And there's so many facets.
Could be so many facets to this,
Yeah.
making sure... Because, like Washington State and Colorado have legalized recreational use, so we can sort of use their guidelines to help,
Right.
as far as getting this going. But, you want to make sure it's done right.
And, what's the benefit to Beverly to start allowing these shops to open? What's the benefit to the state? I guess it's tax revenue.
Yeah,
Instead of having it illegal with no tax revenue, it's legal now, so we can collect.
Exactly. That was the biggest push was, people are doing it anyway.
Right.
Why don't we tax it?
Is it going to be taxed to the level of the tobacco's taxed?
So
somewhere kind of the same, or is it going to work the same way, or is it?
So you'll still have the sales tax. So if you buy it, you get the sales tax. But then there's that surcharge I was talking about, the 3.75%. So that will probably go up. But if Beverly were to have one, the law allows each city and town to have their own 2% tax to add on to that. So Beverly would get that money, that 2%.
Stays right directly.
It stays in Beverly.
Yeah.
Yep. So they would get that. And it does allow, the law does allow, like, you to limit, like, where in the marijuana dispensaries would go.
You'd have to see, because that would have to do with zoning, right?
Right. So it'd be like
what
a zoning.
zone is going to allow,
right.
they'll allow that to be
so
in.
obviously you don't want it in a school zone and things like that.
Right.
And all the laws that are still in place, like driving while impaired, distribution of marijuana, those are all still in effect,
What's the age limit?
21.
So it'd be same as alcohol.
Right, same as alcohol, yeah.
Yeah, because now, isn't it, if you're caught with, I don't know what it is, $100 worth of, or whatever the amount of marijuana, you just get a ticket or something?
Yeah, it's like a civil fine.
But if you're underage, if you're underage with any type of marijuana, that's illegal.
Right. So it's sort of been decriminalized. It's still illegal, but it's a civil penalty, not a criminal penalty. Right now. But this would open it up to use, but still not in the public too. So people should know that too.
So you can't go to a bar and maybe have a drink and have a.
I think that may be one of the regulations that they may came up with. But right now, it's supposed to be in your home, your own use. So, people might think, oh, December 15th and everyone's walking around with joints and
Right.
stuff like that. That's not going to happen, or at least it's not supposed to.
And we talked about it before too. I mean, where do you get the seeds?
Right.
If it's December 15th, you can grow your own plants, but where do you?
And it's an interesting question
the seed
because
from?
it's still illegal federally. So if you're getting seeds mailed to you, well, that's a federal issue because you're using the mail, and some people have said that the Attorney General that Donald Trump wants to appoint, Jeff Sessions, is a strong opponent of marijuana. So it's still illegally federally. So what if he says, you know what, I'm cracking down. Right now, the federal government has sort of looked the other way
Right.
at these states that allow medical marijuana. So what if he just says, no, I'm not going to allow it, and cracks down? Then that could throw a whole nother wrench into this,
It's quite a bit to it.
There is a lot,
It
because just think of like the banking, like in your business or whatever, if you want to take a credit card, that's a federal transaction. You're using the wires.
Right.
And they don't allow that. So some banks won't deal with marijuana companies because they're worried about the federal government and that it's still illegal.
Right.
So there's a lot of cash going around. And so you could have wads and wads of cashes in these businesses. So that's kind of dangerous right there, having all this cash lying around, or going to make a deposit,
Right.
with all this cash. So there's a lot of things that have to be worked out.
Yeah, and so you do know specifically in Beverly what the feeling is in Beverly, or
There was initially some discussion about some people that wanted to put a medical marijuana facility in Beverly, and they didn't get that great a reception. So I'm not sure how it would fly with the recreational use.
Yeah, interesting how it'll all play out.
Yeah.
I mean, because like you said, if there's a benefit with the tax money, maybe certain zoning would allow it to an
Right.
extent, or really limit it if there's a benefit. I mean,
It would have to be, I would suspect they'd want to make it into a business district where it's away from the
Right.
kids and things like that,
I wonder how it would compare. It would sound like that it would be more expensive to buy it legally than to buy it illegally with all the taxes and everything.
That's
So then how much
exactly
incentive are people going to
that's
have
the problem
to buy it?
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to make it so expensive that people aren't buying it legally. At least when
Right.
it becomes legal, it's being tested. It's got certain rules and regulations instead
Yeah.
of just buying it off the street.
You don't know what you're buying, right?
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
So again, too, locally, the tax revenue could be a benefit or a plus. Concerns, obviously, especially it has to do with real estate and home values and things like that. You don't want to have a shop that's near a neighborhood or a school district or something that's going to negatively affect
Right.
home values
Right.
or the desirability of moving into Beverly in general.
Yeah, so I mean, they do allow, like I said, reasonable limitations on where it will go. So I think that would make sense, if
Yeah.
we can do that, to limit it. And like you said, I mean, there would be some tax revenue that would come in.
Right.
So, that's the pluses and minuses. It's a
Right.
complicated issue, no question.
It'd be interesting to see how it all ends up playing
Yeah.
out and how much, Beverly, opposes it or accepts it or whatever.
Right.
Okay, so specifically in Beverly, we have a few projects going on. One of them is Rantoul Street. That's been an ongoing project. Can you give us an update? What's happening there? What can we expect in the near future, and what's kind of the long-term plan?
Yeah, so
And how does the state, specifically
I was involved, yeah.
get involved with it?
Yeah, so Jeff, if people probably have seen the construction, maybe getting a little crazy sometimes about
Yeah.
the detours, but I mean, hopefully they think that it's progress. So essentially, almost from the Beverly-Salem Bridge all the way up to the new Memorial School is all going to be redone. So they're doing a lot of work now. They sort of started like at the Memorial side and also at the bridge side and working their way to the center. Now that it's like wintertime, most of that construction will slow down. So they've already put the binder coat and stuff, but essentially it's just going to be from the whole new street, from the sidewalks in, new streets, new sidewalks, new lighting. Sort of like Rantoul Street was like the unwanted stepchild of downtown. All the attention was going to Cabot Street.
Right.
And so now, having this $20 million project paid for by the state.
So the whole thing is paid for by the state?
Paid for by the state.
Is that
yeah.
a state road or owned by the city?
I mean, it's sort
Kinda.
of like both, but
Yeah.
but it's one of those projects that's been in the works for quite a while, and we're just glad that it made it, finally through this process. They call it a TIP, where transportation improvement projects, and there's a whole bunch of those that communities request from the state, and we've made it through. So they're overseeing the construction, the state is, but it obviously benefits Beverly greatly.
Right.
And there's really going to be some neat lighting and bike paths and things like that. And I think it's really going to help, make Rantoul Street a place where people want to, open up a business. And there's a lot of construction going on in Beverly, a lot of apartments and things like that.
Right. So that's very exciting because as growing up in Beverly, we've seen how it's looked for quite a few years, and to see it be revived, and then, like you said, make it as a, it runs parallel with Cabot Street, so you have an alternative to go, Rantoul, have things going on along with downtown, what's considered downtown and Cabot Street.
Right, and also there's this city also just got a $400,000 state grant to improve Broadway. So Broadway is sort of like the road that leads from the depot up to Cabot. And so that'll all be redone as well. So it'll be kind of like a nice gateway from like Rantoul leading up to Cabot.
Yep.
So that whole roadway is going to be redone too. So, it's going to look nice having those improvements.
There's a post office is staying there too, right?
Yep.
Is
staying
anything
there.
happening with that as far as improvements, or is that basically nothing that you've heard of going on there?
I haven't heard of anything that would, it's a federal building, but I mean, they have improved the sidewalks all around it, the streetscape. They're putting some nice cobblestone and stuff right around there too. So I mean, I think it's gonna look nice. And I think with the new lighting and the sidewalks, I think it's really gonna be attractive for folks and businesses.
Yep. And a lot of the construction now is on Rantoul Street as apartments. So is that generally? You don't see a lot of retail going in right now. Actually, and I could be wrong too with some of these apartments they're building, whether the first floor is retail or not, I'm not sure. Yeah,
the zoning does require like the first floor to have retail. So there's like for example, there's a building that's going to go in front of the MBTA parking garage, and that's going to have retail on the first floor.
Okay.
And then apartments or condos above it. So I think there's a lot of construction, a lot of apartments, in that area because it's so easy for someone who's working in Boston just to walk down the stairs. You walk to the depot and you take the train into Boston.
Yep.
So I think that's why Windover and others have found it desirable to
especially with
build
the new garage
in that
and
area.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. And then we also have another big project going on, is a middle school project. You can see the steel going up. It seems like it's really progressing. What's happening? Can you give us an update on what's going on? Is it we on schedule or?
Yeah, I mean it's supposed
under
to
budget,
open,
over budget. What's happening with?
Everything I've heard is that you're on budget, on time at this point. If we have a crazy winter like a couple years ago, I mean that could affect things. But so far so good. It's a $109 million project. The state's going to pay about $49 million of that, so it's a good chunk. Usually the state would even pay a higher percentage, but with the middle school, the state doesn't reimburse for an auditorium, and Beverly really wanted an auditorium. So I think it was a good decision. We have to pay for it with city funds for that auditorium, but I think it's going to be great to have a nice auditorium. Briscoe has a nice auditorium, Memorial has a nice auditorium, so kids can learn theater, arts, things like that, performances there. So it's going to be a state-of-the-art school. Grades 5 through 6 will have one wing, 7 and 8 will have another wing. And by having the 5th grade go there, that'll eliminate the 5th grade class from all the elementary schools because they're starting to get crowded.
Yeah, I was going to say that I've heard about some overcrowding in the middle school.
Yeah, so that'll help alleviate that. And as you know, like all the elementary schools were redone in the last 10 years or so.
Right.
So when this is done, we're going to have a high school that's like about 5 years old, a new middle school, the elementary schools that were all redone. So we're going to have top-notch schools in Beverly, and a lot of it reimbursed by the state.
Just great.
Yeah.
And directly with people that own homes, the home values definitely get increased, in a positive way.
Exactly. As you know, I mean, people ask you when they're
The
looking
schools
for
are
a
a huge
house, and what
thing.
are the schools? In Beverly, the high school, it was built, and when they built it, they thought, we'll have a couple hundred extra possibly, and it's really like brimming because I think a lot of parents who may have sent their kids to the St. John's Prep or the Bishop Fenwick are keeping their kids in Beverly because it's such a good
So the school is
school.
actually at.
It's pretty high.
So they
in
didn't
capacity.
expect that. Okay, interesting.
Well, whether they expect it or not, I don't know. But
Yeah,
I think they had some innovative programs. They're the Beverly High started that laptop program where each kid had their own laptop. And the principal went to Washington, D.C. to talk to people about it down there. So Beverly's got a great reputation now for its schools. And I think kids that may not have stayed in Beverly are now staying.
Yep.
You know, which
Excellent.
is a good thing.
Yeah, a lot of great things. We have a few minutes left. I know that you worked hard on a veterans bill. I wanted to make sure we touched upon how that.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so I
Helps
mean,
us
as
here
chairman
locally.
of the Veterans Committee, I mean, there's a couple of things that we did that I think will really be helpful for veterans. We're going to give veterans preference in all public housing. So if everything's equal and you're a veteran, then you'd get a preference.
So this is specifically in Beverly too, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's statewide, but
Yeah.
if you're a Beverly resident, you know, and you looking to go into public housing and you served your country, then you're going to get a preference. Back after World War II, that was sort of what was supposed to be done, was build this housing for all these returning veterans. And it started to get filled up in the recently with non-veterans. So this won't displace anybody, but just if you're a veteran, and then you'll get preference. Also, there was a quirk in the law that if you were a 100% disabled veteran, so you're collecting money from the VA, you actually made too much money to qualify for public housing.
Wow.
It didn't make any sense. So we've fixed that so that if you're a 100% disabled veteran, you can't work, then you'll make sure that you qualify for public housing. So we fixed that problem. We made veteran status a protected class in Massachusetts under the anti-discrimination laws. So let's say somebody says, oh, I don't want to hire Jerry, he's a veteran, I don't know what he's been through, is he suffering from PTSD or something like that? So we'll make sure that we protect veterans from being discriminated against. We're one of the few states that's done that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So really, really good stuff.
Yeah, really good stuff.
I mean, obviously, they really deserve it too. It's well deserved. I think there's you hear a lot on the TV about the veterans and how they're treated, and
yeah,
a lot more. That's more on the federal level, I think, when you hear that stuff in the news.
But everybody says that Massachusetts provides the most veteran services. Every city and town has to have their own veterans officer. So if you call Beverly City Hall, you're a veteran, say, hey, can I speak to the veterans officer? There's somebody there, Dave Parent-Chief, who can help out veterans. So we want to make sure we take care of those who've served our country.
Excellent. We have very short period of time left. Anything else you want to touch on quickly, or if not, how do our viewers contact you if they have any further questions?
Yeah. If anybody has any questions, I'm always getting emails and calls from constituents. So gerald.parisella@mahouse.gov or 617-722-2877. Got any questions or concerns, or just Google Jerry Parisella. It'll pop
They'll
up.
find
Maybe
you.
you can and contact my office. Happy to help people out if they got issues or concerns. That's what I'm here for.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Really, really good stuff.
Oh, thanks.
Nice to have you on the show again.
Yeah, nice to be here.
And thank you, everybody, again, for watching Jason's in the House. We really appreciate it. Thank you to BevCamp for all their help and support. And if you have any questions for me, you can feel free to call me at 978-927-6030. Or actually, I have a YouTube channel where you can watch all the videos, youtube.com/JA Parisella. See you next time. Thank you.